One of the stars of Clerks, as well as being one of the stars of AMC's Comic Book Man, Kevin Smith, is doing an anime-styled Masters of the Universe series for Netflix. And this news came right on the heels of the DC and Warner announcement of a new He-Man miniseries, which will launch in November of 2019. And then, of course, there's a movie coming out in 2021. The new series, written by Tim Seeley, will take a multiverse approach with multiple He-Mans battling the scourge of Anti-Eternia and save all of Eternia. Sounds pretty awesome, and so it's a perfect time to dive into the history and the origin of He-Man. Before we begin, I want to thank you for watching this channel, whether it's your first time here or you're returning. I do thank you. And don't forget to subscribe. We do upload content just like this every single week. Let's jump right into the video. Among the beloved Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Voltron, Thundercats toys of the 1980s, there was also the Mattel line that, with the power of Grayskull, became a smash success. In fact, it quickly grew from a respectable $38 million in its first year to a billion-dollar franchise just a few years later, 1984. The CEO of Mattel passed on the rights to the new Star Wars line, the 3.75-inch line. Actually, a bunch of companies did. And they thought they wouldn't do well, but it did massively. And so Mattel quickly needed to play catch up and create their own line, something marketable to boys. They couldn't do war or sci-fi, those had been done, so they went another route popular with boys: sword and sorcery. Mark Taylor, Mike Halpern, and Roger Sweet were all inspired by a few things: Conan the Barbarian, Beowulf, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the iconic imagery of Frank Frazetta. So Roger Sweet actually pitched an idea that was specific to their chosen genre, but generic enough to appeal to the masses. And then it was Mattel's toy designer, Mark Taylor, who stepped in for the character designs, which evolved from this Cro-Magnon prototype to a barbarian look to the Conan-esque design that we have today. Mark went to Toys R Us, attempted to sell the toys and to get them on the shelves, but the execs at Toys R Us said something to the effect of, "What boys don't read." And that's when Ellis said, "Hey, did we tell you about the TV specials we're planning?" The problem was that there was nothing planned at that point, so they had to run over to Filmation really quick and draft something up. Filmation's Lou Scheimer said, "Hey, let's do a series instead of a couple specials," and thus the idea for an animated component to the He-Man franchise was born. Mark Ellis also called up DC Comics to have them create a comic book which would help sell the toys. Initially, He-Man was just He-Man. There was no Prince Adam or Eternia or backstory. It was rather two-dimensional, quite honestly. Prior to the debut of the cartoon series, we did get these little mini comics which told some additional details about our heroes and foes. Here, He-Man was just He-Man, and he was from an Eternian tribe when he came upon the sorceress who bestowed upon him his harness, his battle axe, all his gear. It was Michael Halpern later on who made the Prince of Adam angle actual canon. With the mini comics being packaged with toys and with many millions sold, some estimates are upwards of 77 million, it gives it one of the largest print runs in comic book history. But you can't find them anywhere. It quickly became immensely popular with millions of kids and rose to become one of the highest rated animated shows of its time. It lasted for 130 episodes and then an additional 77 episodes for the spin-off show, which was She-Ra. And you had people like Paul Dini, J. Michael Straczynski, Chaim Saban working on the show. They're people who worked on Batman, the animated series, Spider-Man, Babylon 5, Power Rangers, tons more. Really great talent that they had for this project. So let's talk about He-Man himself. He-Man is an Eternian, but in truth, he's only half Eternian. Marlena Glenn, whose name is inspired by John Glenn, of course, famous astronaut, she was born on Earth and worked for NASA. Her shuttle crew consisted of Evelyn Powers, Biff Beastman, and T.E. Scope. They took off on the shuttle for one mission where a catastrophe of Planet of the Apes proportions happened and the shuttle crashed right on Eternia. Being stranded, she was actually taken in and fell in love with Randor, who was the king of Eternia, and she became his queen. They had their baby, Prince Adam, and his twin sister, Adora. Marlena's shuttle crew found their way to Skeletor's doorstep. And Skeletor changed them into Evil Lyn, Triclops, and Beastman. Although in one continuity, perhaps this is one of the many in the He-Man multiverse, Evil Lyn is the daughter of a powerful sorcerer named the Faceless One. The Faceless One was once a guardian of magic artifacts at Castle Grayskull named Nicholas Powers, but this order of sorcerers were abstinent, and Nicholas had Evil Lyn, which broke the order's treaty with the evil Snake Men from Snake Mountain, and so he was banished. At one point, his daughter actually plotted against Skeletor by forming an alliance with King Hiss and Cobra Khan of the Snake Men. One of the mini comics that was released with the toy line says that Skeletor was actually once King Randor's brother, a prince named Keldor. He was performing some dark magic, or Randor splashed him with acid, depending on the story you're reading, and ended up in another dimension where his face was burned off, the bones seared, and he was being transformed into the evil blue Skeletor. This was rather vague for a long time, but the animated series that debuted in 2002 confirmed this connection. So that means that Skeletor is actually He-Man's uncle. which is really interesting, but it does get a little bit weirder. Keldor is supposedly from an ancient race of blue skin aliens called the Gar. He was adopted, I guess, and there seems to be a lot of adoptions going on Eternium. Anyway, apparently Keldor was first in line for the throne, being the elder brother, but it was given to Randor and not his blue-skinned brother. So, sounds a little sketchy. But after that, Skeletor allied himself with Hordak, this evil guy from the Fright Zone dimension, for a bit of time, and Hordak actually rules the Hordak Empire from Horde World. Anyway, Keldor then posted up on Snake Mountain, a place from which he would plan his assaults on Castle Grayskull. Although he is from another dimension called Despondos, which is where he staged the attacks on King Grayskull from. We'll get to that in a minute. The multiverse that will be touched upon in Tim Seeley's miniseries can address this by saying there are multiples of each other and that all the backstories do count. It's also said that while Keldor was banished to the other dimensions, maybe it was the Fright Zone where he met Hordak. Hordak saved his life, the magic searing his face to the bone and turning him blue. So there's some conflicting information, but that's the general idea. And also, this guy Trapjaw was one of his minions during that time. He was mortally wounded during a battle, and I end up giving him those machine parts that we see him with. He-Man also had his orange and green pet tiger named Cringer, who transforms with him to the ferocious Battle Cat. To transform into He-Man, Prince Adam has to loft a mystical broadsword over his head called the Sword of Power and exclaim, "By the power of Grayskull!" His twin sister Adora would yell, "For the honor of Grayskull!" while holding her sword of protection on high. Skeletor also has a sword, and for the action figures, it would take Skeletor and He-Man's swords together, which would actually form a key that could unlock Castle Grayskull in the set. And so this became one of Skeletor's primary objectives, in unlocking the castle, which would allow him to dominate over all of Eternia. In 2015, to the Eternity War, we see that She-Ra's sword was forged in the event that He-Man fell and his sword was corrupted to evil forces. The swords were forged in antiquity by this race of beings who lived eons ago called the Ancient Ones, or the First Ones. These people populated both Eternia and Etheria, but fell centuries ago during the Great Wars, their technology out-surviving their society. Later, King Devon Grayskull possessed the swords and used them in battle, channeling mystic energy to defeat King Hiss and his Snakemen. A treaty between the Etherians and the Snakemen was established, and King Grayskull had a wife named Vina. He ended up dying, and his mystical power transferred back to the swords. And so an order of sorcerers and a council of elders were established to help protect the swords, the castle, and ultimately all of Eternia. The order included Nicholas Powers, Kudak, Ungol, and later Tila Na. Tila Na was once an Etherian from the village of Nawella, a village that was attacked and pillaged by the Horde, led by the vile Morgoth. She made her way to the castle, was summoned inside, and found the ancient sorceress Kudak Ungol, who granted her powers and made her protector of Castle Grayskull. She inherited the sorcerer's power. So Nicholas Powers went against the Oath's order of abstinence and had a baby in some continuity, and he was banished. But when Tila Na had a baby, she quickly gave it over to Duncan, who adopted the baby as his own. And the baby would grow up to be Tila, captain of the Royal Guard and He-Man's love. And at one time, Adam and Tila adopted a young Etherian named Dare, and he became He-Man's son, adopting the name Hero. But that never came to fruition. The sorceress in Castle Grayskull is the one that actually grants He-Man his powers. She was to give the mystical power to any of Devon Grayskull's ancestors that she deemed worthy. Grayskull descendants were King Miro, who had Captain turned King Randor, who then had Adam. Adam's identity is something he does try to keep secret from almost everyone, and it is said that his mom has figured out who he is, but doesn't tell anyone because she understands that the secret is to protect the family. To most, just a really jacked Prince Adam. His harness, which was also given to him by the sorceress, is made from Korodite, and it really bolsters his already impressive physical might. Anyway, Prince Adam grew up in the castle, making friends with a little wizard named Orko, an extra-dimensional being from the Trolla race. Hidden under Orka's hat and scarf and cloak is a little blue elf-like being. He-Man has a younger sister named Adora, and a friend/mentor in General Duncan, who goes by the name Man-at-Arms. It was around the age of 16 that He-Man got his powers, and Adora gained her powers, which are similar to He-Man's, and went on to another planet called Etheria to help defend them against Hordak and his evil horde. In 1987, Masters of the Universe came out as a movie starring Dolph Lundgren as Prince Adam, as well as featuring Frank Langella, Courtney Cox, Chelsea Field, Billy Barty as this weird little creature with the sound device that was made just for the movie named Gwildor. It didn't do well. There was a sequel planned, and it actually, the failure of it in canon films caused the Spider-Man movie to fail as well back then. And finally, in 2021, we'll finally be getting a new live-action film by David Goyer and starring Noah Centineo as Prince Adam. Anyway, that's it for this one, my friends. All about He-Man, Master of the Universe. As always, I'm Jesse. This is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.